Israel is committing a horrific genocide against, well, it's an ongoing one, but they've really scaled up the genocide against Palestinians. And I think there's a lot of like background behind that. That Abby knows something about.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, look, like, it is a very historic case. This is actually an amazing thing to finally, after all of these decades, 75 years of oppression, ethnic cleansing, occupation, bombing with impunity, finally, Israel's crimes are being heard in international court, and that is amazing. That's amazing.
Regardless of the outcome.
And this is regardless of the outcome, and I think the case is so clear-cut. There's no way to question the evidence put forward, and so really it's just going to be the legitimacy of the court at this point.
That's why Israel's only defense is to be like a horrific, narcissistic, like collective narcissism, where they're just like gaslighting everyone. They're like, we are killing all Palestinians because we hate them, but also we're protecting civilians, and you're just like, what?
Well, yeah, they're like trying to use their entire case, right, at the ICJ was saying how much the Palestinians wanted to kill them, which that's not a legal defense. You can't use genocide as a self-defense, which is kind of what they're implying and trying to suggest, even if that were the truth, which it's not.
Even if all the lies Israel has told in the last almost 4 months now, even if every single lie was true, and when I say lie, I mean like all caps, like 40 beheaded babies, all of the disgusting racist claims they've made about like the disgusting Browns came just to rape all our white women, which is like a historically racist smear against anyone brown and black to just call them all rapists of white women. And we should all like emphasize that that's a racist claim to make if you don't have any evidence. On top of that, like everything, all the lies, the fact that they blame Hamas for killing everyone when it's like their own media says that they bombed their own people. Even if every horrific claim they've made about what they say Hamas did on October 7th, even if all of it were true, nothing justifies genocide. Nothing justifies killing babies, like 10,000 babies.
Right.
Nothing justifies that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I asked someone this today. I was like, how many babies is acceptable for you? Because she kept saying, but October 7th, but Hamas, but they killed these people, but they killed those people. And it's like, what is the threshold for you? Is there ever enough Palestinian
dead
babies?
kids?
Like, yeah, it's unbelievable that people think that they're going to convince anyone that what Israel's doing is okay because of something that happened on October 7th. And I just think that, you know, it's just very easy to say, for me at least, like, there's literally nothing you could tell me about October 7th. Nothing that I could find out about October 7th that would justify what Israel's doing.
Right, especially that our article that came out in 972 Mag about Israel's assassination factory, how like Israeli intelligence officers admitted on record that we know every person in every building. We know if there's a 3-year-old girl, and we calculate that. And we methodically go through and take out these targets. And so everything is justified and rationalized. They know every kid who's being blown to bits.
You know, okay, so like having grown up in this country as the child of Middle Eastern immigrants, like in the America, in the United States of America. I'm so sorry to Americans who aren't U.S. that I just said that. I know someone's rolling their eyes at me right now. In the U.S., having grown up here as a child of immigrants who are Middle Eastern, and having like grown up during 9/11 and having experienced the racism from that, like I understand this country as a racist country, obviously, but I still am shocked by just how virulently bloodthirsty the people who run this country are when it comes to Palestinians, when it comes to Arabs. They don't care. Like, we're all watching people carrying the limbs of their children that they've had to dig from under the rubble. And you see people have lost their homes and their families. They're living without shelter, without bathrooms. Women are getting C-sections without anesthesia.
And their amputations.
Babies, oh my God. I'm sorry, there's been so many phases of this genocide. There was the phase where they were just like starving premature babies. Israel was enthusiastically letting 3 premature babies die. And the people who run this country were like, yeah, that seems fair. They're not here. Like, that's essentially the message that I've received. I'm sure all of you have received, is that people in the global South are not human. And Gaza is the embodiment of that at this moment. It is like a version of what the West wants for the global South is like annihilation. Like if you fight back, we will kill all of you because you are not human. That's what I see right now.
And it's like this ridiculous false dichotomy, or not false dichotomy, but this ridiculous premise of like, what else is Israel supposed to do? Don't they have the right to defend themselves? It's like, how on earth can you pretend what they're doing now is self-defense? How is targeting journalists self-defense? How is targeting babies, like you just mentioned, Abby, self-defense? Or people having amputations without anesthesia? None of this is self-defense. It's, like you said, bloodlust, and it's because there is such a dehumanization of Palestinians in particular, Arabs in general, but especially Palestinians. And it's, it's just the response from the United States is like, don't worry guys, we're having tough talks. We're having hard conversations. That's really how they're responding. That's what John Kirby says. That's what Jake Sullivan says. And then if you ask if they're committing genocide, they say that they don't want to play judge and juror.
I mean, yeah, Gaza's always been like a testing ground, and it's so disturbing to just see it as far as they'll take it, just being greenlit, and it's like everyone's just watching this unfold, and the U.S. is facilitating it all. And I think that we should talk about like what happened before October 7th, because
nothing.
Well,
That's when history started.
In the context of, Abby has a fantastic documentary that if you have not seen it, it's available online for free. Gaza Fights for Freedom. And you collaborated on that with a bunch of really great people from Gaza.
Yeah, because I was banned from getting in because, they always say like, oh, Jews can't enter Gaza. It's like, well, you're not letting them. Like you selectively decide who can be a yes man journalist to go in and tow your narrative, as we're seeing with CNN and all the censorship bureau that like, you have to like vet everything through the IDF before you can reveal anything. And so when I was there in 2016, I had all the proper credentials and paperwork, and they were just like, no, like you're a propagandist, you're banned for life from getting in. And so we worked with photojournalists and incredible heroic journalists who risked their lives running away from bullets at the Great March of Return during those months from 2018 to 2019, where over 200 Palestinians were assassinated by Israeli snipers. At that time, I thought that that was the most egregious thing Israel has ever done. And so we wanted to compile that story because the Western media was so egregiously, so one-sided, so disgusting, basically saying people were dying of head wounds without saying they were being targeted and shot by snipers, children, disabled people, medics, journalists, of course, Razan al-Najjar. And it was all wrapped around international law. Like, and you think if people just saw this, if they just saw what Israel is really about, like, it's like target practice for them. I mean, they release video. There's a scene in the movie where Israeli soldiers actually released in an internal Facebook group them picking off kids
and celebrating,
and laughing about it and celebrating. And people always ask, like, oh my God, how did you get that footage? It's like, they released that themselves because they celebrate that internally, and it got leaked. But all the people involved in the film are, they've all been rendered homeless. Their homes have been completely destroyed. They have no future at all. Maz Maza, the incredible, heroic videographer who filmed most of the material, he lost two brothers, not lost, they were murdered. Let's call it what it is. And they're living in tents, they're living under rubble, and every day is a gift because they think they could just die at any moment. And how do you even check in at this point? And there's Ahmed Artema, who was the incredible lead organizer of the Great March. His house was targeted because Israel's using this war to just execute all of their political dissidents, all the political dissidents who they've been basically taking names of. And so they bombed Ahmed's home, and his 10-year-old son was murdered alongside 5 of his family members, and he's sitting in a hospital with second-degree burns. So it's so real because everyone has a story. It's not just the people that I know, it's every single person in Gaza has lost almost everything because there's no rebuilding this. You can't rebuild that. Like, we've just let this happen. Like, not we, but I mean the West has facilitated this and let this happen. It's disgusting.
Empowered it.
Facilitated it.
Yeah, facilitated it, yeah. Coordinated it.
But I know I've been talking forever, but I wanted to really quickly, like back in 2014 during Operation Protective Edge, another Orwellian, like dystopian name for just slaughtering Palestinians. I'll never forget, I was working at Russia Today, and I did this rant.
Get out.
Sorry, you have to leave.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a Russian.
Sorry, wow, out.
Do you condemn Putin? So I remember I did this video. It became viral in the Middle East because it was an indictment on Western journalism for not doing their jobs and not documenting Israeli war crimes at the time. So it became viral in Palestine. And right after that happened, Israeli forces bombed the Al-Sharouk journalist tower, and an RT cameraman's leg was blown off. And so our boss at RT was like, issued a stern letter to authorities being like, did you know that you did this? And like, what are you gonna do? And they were just like, RT has taken a side in the coverage. Of course we knew there were journalists in the building.
So disgusting.
And so I think that was like my first insight, like, oh, this is like a special kind of impunity and a special kind of brazenness that not even the United States would do because it cares too much about its image, but its appendage, Israel can and will do anything that it wants as long as the U.S. is
and
backing
there's
it.
nothing that's like too much for the U.S. to tolerate and enable. You were in Israel and you documented some of this genocidal rhetoric. We have a video of that. Can we take a look at that?
Yeah, this is a fun one. Go, yeah.
Sure, do it. There's only one way, like, I would carpet bomb them.
You would carpet bomb them?
It's the only way you could deal with it. Like, or try to stop them a different way. It never worked.
You mean all Arabs or Gaza or?
I believe that I hope to believe they're not, but I do think
Basically
they are.
saying all Arabs. Carpet bomb all Arabs.
I don't trust them. You can't trust them. And that's the only way I believe that the only way is just to stop it completely.
I think that we're miserable. The Arabs make a פיגועים and we need to kill Arabs.
Oh, so funny.
Okay.
We'll talk about this later.
All right, cool. Well,
There is also Jewish civilians that hate Arabs. Yeah, I'm not saying, but we have also people that like the Arabs and everything, like Smolanim.
I think another thing that the Jews should have rights to hate them. I think we have the right to hate them. I don't see a reason why not. I wouldn't trust any of them.
I like how the other guy was just like, oh, yeah, like, no. And he was like, no. We
Also,
have the
Ali,
right to hate all of them, and we
you
should
were-
carpet bomb them all.
You weren't like doing gotchas. You were just
Right,
walking
yeah.
in the street. Like and there was, by the way, you should go watch the whole video. It's like
That's not the
it's
only-
like dozens of people.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. Everyone's always like, you wanted to make Israelis look bad. I was like, I genuinely didn't know what I was getting into at all. I had no idea that I was like in Nazi Germany until you just start talking. It was like the most basic question, like, how do you feel about the situation? Kill them all, carpet bomb them all. You're like, oh my God, what is happening here? I mean, pre-October 7th, I mean, this was just the every day in Israeli society. And you go back to the Great March of Return when they picked off people one by one for doing nothing but peacefully protesting, and 95% of Israelis supported the shoot to kill if you just venture too close to that artificial border fence in Gaza.
You know how many Israelis want a ceasefire right now, according to a poll? Like, I think from the last couple months, so I don't know.
0.01.
2%?
It's like 3%. Yeah, wow, you guys underestimated. But tell me, like, who are you supposed to make peace with? Peace with, when only 3% of people are, and it's probably like 3% that they accidentally asked an Arab, because like 20% of the population is Palestinians. They forgot to ethnically cleanse.
Yeah, the Arabs there.
They were like, oops, we left these villages here.
But the only reason that became so viral is because you never see Israelis speaking for themselves. I mean, they were speaking knowing that they were on camera. That's what's so bizarre.
Right,
about
this
it.
wasn't like a hidden camera.
No, this was like, okay, what are you guys saying off camera? If this is like
yeah.
what you're
this
proudly
is their,
saying
like,
on
politically
camera.
correct version.
On September 12th, an Israeli Knesset party approved a plan to annex all of the occupied territories that would erase Palestine completely. This is considered an extremist solution to a conflict that has spanned decades, and the so-called key to peace in the Middle East. But how do Jewish Israeli citizens feel, those who are not in the government or living in illegal settlements? Last year, I traveled around the West Bank to release a series for the Empire Files on the plight of Palestinians, featuring their voices and stories. But I also went to speak to average Israelis in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. We're here in Zion Square in Jerusalem, which the government has actually declared to rename Tolerant Square. And we're just going to ask everyday Israelis what they think about the situation. You're American. Where are you from, and why did you come here?
I'm from New York, and I came here with my family when I was younger to make Aliyah because it was always my parents' dream to come to Israel because we're religious.
So, are you American?
Yes.
Oh, cool. When did you move here and why?
I moved here 11 years ago. My family moved here because this is the country of the Jewish people and the future of the Jewish people, and we want to be here.
How old are you guys?
18.
We're 18 years old.
Now we are here in Israel taking a leadership course, and we're going to the army for a few months to see how life's here. And then we hope to bring back some of this knowledge to our youth movements.
So you're like an internship with the army?
It's about 2 months, and they show you everything about the army.
Israel is a great place. It's a nice place. You should come and visit. I love Israel, and I feel safe here.
All that misconceptions are not true. Like, there's not people with knives every day, and there's not people exploding.
Palestinians?
Yeah. No, but pretty much the life here is really good.
For people living here, it's just normal to see people in the army walking around with guns, and you feel completely safe and protected.
I feel like we know who the threat is, and it's not coming from anyone random, as opposed to in the rest of the world that it could be anyone. Here we know who our enemy is, and we know that they are out to get us.
Who is the enemy?
Who's the enemy? That's a very good question. I don't think it's specifically any nation. I think it's the people that are so interested in being politically correct that they won't actually go after the people that are trying to cover things up.
I think that the Islam it's a very bad disease, not just for Israel, for all around the world. We can see it. They think they all have to be Islam. If you're not Islam, they will kill you.
A lot of Americans don't really understand what Israel's like. We hear a lot of things in the news. A lot of people are sympathizing with the Palestinian plight. Can you talk about what it's like to kind of live in this situation?
First of all, it's very hard. I'm in an organization. It's called Lahava. It's against the Jews shouldn't marry Arabs.
Did you say the organization did what again?
The organization is, the thing of it is that Jews shouldn't marry Arabs.
Shouldn't marry Arabs.
Yeah.
Why do you feel strongly about that?
Because Jews is a special nation that God gave it to the Jews, and we don't want Jews to get mixed up together with a different nation.
I think Israelis have to take over, and they have to kick them away. It will be much better not to kill them, just to go back to Arab countries.
You can't deal with these people. There's no need to try. There's no need to talk to them. What we can do is when they do enough harm, we retaliate. That's war, and that's the situation that any Jew who lives in Israel has to deal with.
יש לך משהו להגיד, אומרת
על מה?
גם ככה ערבים, מקסימום.
אוקיי, בסדר בעברית? פשוט מאוד, צריך להיכנס לשטחים, וכל מחבל שעושה פיגוע צריך להרוג אותו, צריך להרוג את המחבלים, ואז הם יפחדו ולא יעשו לנו בעיות, והכל יהיה בסדר. הם יהיו בכפרים שלהם, אנחנו נחיה פה, לא צריך להיות ביחד, והכל בסדר.
I think also that every Arab that doing a terrorism attack, we have to kill him, and not because he's an Arab, because he's a terrorist. I think you should also kick out the family, because it all begins with chinuch. How you say it?
Education.
Whatever they teach the kids does. You know, it's families.
I'm think that we need to... איך אומרים להעיף את הערבים? כן, תגידי לי את המילה הזאת. נו, תגידי לי מילים, אני לא...
אני לא יודעת לתרגם. I don't know how to translate really well.
I think we should give them a country. If you're doing any problem, you just go in there to give them a country, and then it's going to be a war between countries, you know? If they're going to throw rockets, we're going to throw one big one and done.
I don't think there's any answer to it. Really? There's only one way, like, I would carpet bomb them.
You would carpet bomb them?
It's the only way you could deal with it. Like, or try to stop them a different way, it never worked.
You mean all Arabs or Gaza or?
I believe that they, like, I hope to believe they're not, but I do think they are, because I don't trust them. You can't trust them, and that's the only way I believe that. The only way is just to stop it completely.
I think that we're miserable. The Arabs make a פיגועים and we need to kill Arabs. No.
Okay.
We'll talk about this later.
All right, cool. Well,
there is also Jewish civilians that hate Arabs. Yeah, I'm not saying, but we have also people that like the Arabs and everything, like Smolanim.
I think another thing that the Jews should have rights to hate them. I think we have the right to hate them. I don't see a reason why not. I wouldn't trust any of them.
To better understand this mentality, I also talked to Ronnie Barkin, a Jewish Israeli citizen who grew up in the country and is now an ardent critic of the notion of a Jewish state.
Like anyone growing up in Israel, I went through the whole indoctrination mechanism. And we are being trained to be soldiers from kindergarten, literally from kindergarten. The moment I realized I managed to sort of overcome that indoctrination, then everything became very clear, because the situation is crystal clear. One of the main successes of Israeli propaganda is to convince the world that the situation is complicated. But it's far from being complicated. It's probably the least complicated conflict in the world today. And it's all about basically those who have the power, those who oppress and subjugate and tread over the indigenous people of the land who have been oppressed and subjugated and expelled from their land. And this is what it's about. The situation here is not very different other than the way it is perceived in the world and among Israeli society themselves. They like to perceive themselves as being something else, as being, liberal and progressive and all of that. And I also thought of myself as such until I realized that actually, this is not the case. The case is very clear, and I'm not on the right side of history. And that's when, the moment I managed to overcome this type of brainwashing, then the rest was very easy. The State of Israel is all about creating a place which is for one select group and only that. It's not only the fact that they wanted to take over, to usurp the land and the resources and all of that. It's also about this exclusive nature of the place, that this is ours and only ours. And even any Palestinian being born in Israel, even if they're Israeli citizens, is already regarded as some sort of a threat to the state. Mm-hmm. The need to segregate, the need to separate and not to interact with Palestinians is part of Israeli identity. So we have to understand that Israeli identity depends on denying Palestinian identity and denying either the existence of Palestinians altogether or at the very least denying their identity, their culture and so on. And also, right after the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, right after the Palestinians were expelled from their homes and became refugees, the very next thing that happened was that there was a concerted effort of mass looting of books and other cultural artifacts from Palestinian homes, which was led by the National Library in Israel. So it's for a reason that when we say existence is resistance for Palestinians, this is true. Just by very existing on their land, this is an act of resistance in itself. Even more so when they actually claim their rights, claim their identity, do cultural work, like produce Palestinian culture, that is an act of war.
After learning a lot in Jewish history and Israel history, I've seen that people make a big deal about a lot of different areas. But if you look back, correct me if I'm wrong, if you look back at the history, the areas, these places are really rightfully ours. If it was any other country that would have conquered these places or taken over these places, nobody would make a big deal. It's just because it's Israel and there's anti-Semitism and everything.
They kicked us about 2,000 years ago, and we came back. We have Jerusalem. We built every stone here. Every stone, 3,000 years ago. Over here,
This all is 3,000 years ago?
this is the city of David. 2,500 years ago. All history of the Jewish people, and the Islam doesn't have history at all in this country.
I think that they should actually look at a history book and look at the progression of history and who occupied Israel, go further back. So if it could be that the Palestinians occupied Israel, that's true, but who occupied that before that? And if you keep going back to the times of like the Bible, you'll see that it was indeed the Jews that did occupy.
Palestinian, where are the Palestinian people during 4,000 years under the Ottoman? Answer me.
Well, I'm the journalist here, so I don't...
And how God punished is the sins? By other people. He said, he sent the Nazis, he sent, and now he sent Palestinians.
Okay.
But it's really rightfully ours if you look at the history and at like the wars, and we didn't even start a lot of the wars, and we conquered these places rightfully, like it's ours.
We brought the settlements in by Gaza, you know, all the Gush Katif strip.
Gave Gaza back.
Well, we gave part of Israel. It's not that it's not Gaza. We do things for peace.
I think that the Jews came here, they took this land, and this is our land now, and I don't think there should be here no Arabs. Like Arabs, they want, we gave them Gaza, they should go live there quietly if they want. They should go back to Iraq, I don't know, to wherever they want. But this is a place that God gave it to the Jews, and we don't want the Arabs to be here.
And before they accuse anyone of occupying, they should actually look back and look at history.
So you wouldn't call any of this occupied territory?
No, I think that whatever deals were made and wars were fought, they took the land, and that's the way things work. I mean, would you call America occupied by Americans because the British used to rule?
The people who kicked the Jews out of Israel were the Arabs. 1,400 years later, we come back. Now, I'm not saying that we can blame the people living here for what happened, but you gotta accept that that's some kind of divine justice, that their great-great-great-great-grandfathers kicked my great-great-great-grandfather out of here, and then we come back, and all of a sudden they're like, well, no, we don't want it, it's not fair. They took the land from us, not the Romans, and not the Persians, and not the Byzantines. It was Arabs who took this land from Jews. And so, yeah, we came back and we took what was rightfully ours.
Besides the fact that before the Jews came to here in the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was like a barren land. Like, because the Jews came here, it started to like flourish or whatever and become actually, like, people started planting things and making settlements in all these places. If the Jews never came here, then it'd be in the same place it was like 200 years ago, or not where it is today. And so the Jews came here and they started making it better for also the Arabs, and they only start to be an issue because the Arabs started to make it more of an issue.
How many people think like you? What is the state of the left wing within Israeli society?
So the people who think like me are a negligible few. And I would argue that there is no left in Israel and never ever existed. What you have are those self-proclaimed leftists, liberal Zionists, who basically speak the language of peace and human rights and so on in order to sugarcoat their racism and supremacy. And they speak a very different language than the acting government, for example, because the acting government is clearly a right-wing government. They are shameless about their racist attitudes and so on. They say this is ours and only ours. Many of them are decent enough to say, yes, there was the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, and that's a good thing. The problem is that we haven't finished the job, that there are still Palestinians left in Palestine. With the other type of Zionists, with the so-called left in Israel, we cannot even agree about the basic facts. But for them, in order to feel that they are both Zionist and moral at the same time, they have to keep lying to themselves all the time, every moment of every day. So they have perfected this whole discourse of lies in order to lie to themselves and also in order to lie to the international community, in order to justify their existence here in that.
I think the occupation does have a role, a big role and important. I don't think there should be no occupation at all, but in the occupation things needs to be more human.
Do you get called a leftist a lot?
Yeah, and I am a leftist.
Is leftist a slur sometimes?
Yes, it is. It is not a good way to be called in Israel.
Israel doesn't want to compromise on security. They have to do a blockade. They have to kind of cut this off. It's, it's ridiculous what people have to go through there, but it's also ridiculous what we have to do to keep ourselves safe.
We don't want to fight with them. But if they ask for it, they will get it. And we're much stronger, much stronger. We are behave very gently and morally, very gently with them.
It could get a lot worse, is what you're saying.
If the Russians was here, 2 days, they will kill all of them. If the American will be here, they will kill them 2 days. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about nothing.
Israel's holding back.
Very, very.
But it's war, and civilians get killed in war, and it's a horrible, on their side, less on our side, but at the same time, we put money into protecting ourselves.
Well, look, the refugees, their situation is horrible, but no other nation in the world gets the refugee status that Palestinians do. The Palestinians, third-generation people, are still considered refugees.
I had friends that were Canadian. They went on their passports. They wanted to see what the refugee camps were. They wanted to see what it was all about. They came back. They said it's nothing what I imagined it.
Better than they imagined? Or?
They said people were driving around with nice cars. People had nice houses, villas, things like that. They thought people were being oppressed, like living in tents. It was like they probably were, like maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, like in the past.
For them, in order for them to be Zionist and moral, in order for them to have a Jewish and democratic state, they needed, first of all and foremost, to create a Jewish majority by force, by driving away the indigenous people from their land. And this is how the state was founded. And immediately afterwards, they created a whole legal system that will make sure that those who have been expelled will never be allowed back, and those who remained on their land, because not everyone was expelled, will never be equal citizens. Unfortunately, what we hear on mainstream media, this so-called discourse or so-called debate between the right and the left is about that. It's about, do we want a large Israel, which is Arab-free, or do we want a small Israel, which is Arab-free? This is the debate that's taking place.
Last question. There's this whole international movement of leftists and activists who want to boycott Israel for human rights violations. Being here, seeing that, and what do you just think about that?
I think the BDS movement, the leaders of the BDS movement, or everyone that thinks that Israel is bad, if they should read up about the topic, the other side, and they should come here and see how everybody's comfortable.
People right now, they're looking at Israel and they're calling it an apartheid state. And Israel is not an apartheid state. There's places, my family from 5 generations ago, they were from Jenin. You can't find one Jew in Jenin right now. It's totally Jew-free. So if you want to think about a racist apartheid state, it seems it's more, in my opinion, coming from their side.
And just a response, I guess, to kind of this international movement, the BDS movement, and also the movement that says settlements are illegal, they're encroaching on Palestinian land. Can you respond to that accusation?
I think the response would be two-part. The first part would be very simple. Nobody gives Turkey problems for their settlements in Cyprus. It's an anti-Semitic thing. Maybe they don't know that they hate Jews, but they give us so much trouble. The UN only talks about Israel. What about North Korea? What about Russia? Then the second thing would be to say is that...
Even from the UN?
Completely from the UN. I mean, come on. You're talking about that we're worse than the North Korean dictatorship? Like, nobody in the world thinks that. So those people in the UN and all these peace activists, look, she's a woman. She's walking around however she wants here in Israel, right? There's female genital mutilation in Egypt, not very far from here. Why don't people talk about that?
I think that, we should have not more rights. I think we have rights to build more houses for our citizens. And a lot of things that Israel gets criticism for, other countries will never get it.
אני רוצה להגיד פה לראש ממשלה פה בארץ, בישראל, אין מצב שיהיה פה שלום בארץ. אי אפשר לעשות איתם שלום, הם תמיד שונאים אותנו. אם אי אפשר לעשות שלום והמצב ככה לא יכול להישאר, אז צריך לטפל בהם בדרכים אחרות, אין מה לעשות.
It's irrelevant. The views of Israelis about the situation are totally irrelevant to the question of how do we change the situation. Did it matter what white people think about apartheid in South Africa at the time? The question is, how do we end apartheid and how do we end Israeli crimes? You know, every Israeli official will claim to speak on behalf of the Jewish people and will even demand of Palestinians to recognize Israel's right to be a Jewish state and so on. I don't recognize Israel's right to be a Jewish state because it is not Jewish by religion. It is only Jewish by supremacy. Israel is Jewish just like South Africa was white in the exact same context, with the exact same meaning. And obviously any decent person around the world should oppose that because it is inherently racist and more than that. And it also happens to be very much against international law. So when we talk about Israel as an apartheid state, even though it's not exactly like South Africa, it neatly falls under the legal definition of the crime of apartheid, which is a very serious crime, one of the few crimes that is regarded as a crime against humanity, which means that all countries of the world are obligated to do something against it, not to be complicit in that. And what we're coming and saying is, no, there are basic fundamental Palestinian rights that must be respected. One of them is ending of the occupation, of course, but that's not the main issue, that's part of the issue. The other two rights are equality inside Israel proper, or what we call Palestine 48, and the rights of the refugees which are being expelled from there since the very foundation of the State of Israel. These are fundamental rights, they must be respected. And now we can debate, we can argue about how do we implement these rights. I'm willing to discuss that. I'm not willing to discuss, should we have equality or not. This is not negotiable.